Document, Part 1. The year was 2087, and humanity had finally reached a moment it had dreamed about for centuries: contact with an alien species. It wasn't the peaceful meeting many had hoped for. Instead, it was a day filled with fear, confusion, and anger. The aliens called themselves the Vrilax, and they arrived in Earth's orbit aboard a massive mothership that seemed to blot out the sun. The ship was enormous, far bigger than anything humans could build, and its sleek, metallic surface gleamed like polished silver. People all over the world watched in awe as news channels broadcast live footage of the alien vessel hovering silently above the planet. Daniel Carter sat in the dimly lit control room at NASA headquarters, his eyes glued to the large screen displaying the transmission from the Vrilax. He was a young astrophysicist with messy brown hair and glasses that always seemed slightly crooked. Beside him sat Emma Lewis, a communications specialist with sharp green eyes and a calm demeanor. Her job was to try and decode the strange language being transmitted by the aliens. Together, they were part of a team tasked with understanding what the Vrilax wanted and why they were here. The leader of the Vrilax introduced himself as Zynar. His voice came through the speakers, deep and cold, translated into English by advanced AI systems. Zynar appeared on the screen as a holographic projection, a tall insect-like creature with glowing blue eyes and elongated limbs. His tone was one of pure arrogance, and every word he spoke felt like a slap to humanity's face. "You are primitive," Zynar said, his voice echoing in the control room. "Your technology is weak, your mind simple. We have come to guide you, but only if you prove worthy." Daniel clenched his fists under the table, trying to stay calm. He glanced at Emma, who looked just as frustrated as he felt. The words stung because they weren't entirely wrong. Compared to the Vrilax, humanity's technology did seem outdated. But to hear it said so bluntly, in front of the entire world, was humiliating. Thousands of people were watching this broadcast live, and millions more would see recordings later. Social media was already exploding with reactions. Some people were scared, others angry, and a few even laughed nervously, thinking it might be some kind of prank. Zynar continued, his hologram flickering slightly as he moved closer to the camera. "We will allow you to remain under our protection, but there is a price. You must surrender your most advanced technology to us. If you refuse, we will leave you to fend for yourselves. Or worse." The room fell silent except for the hum of computers running in the background. Everyone in the control room exchanged worried glances. This wasn't just a request. It was a threat. The Vrilax fleet consisted of dozens of ships, each one bristling, with weapons capable of wiping out entire cities. Humanity didn't stand a chance in a direct fight, yet giving up their best technology meant handing over decades of progress to an alien race that clearly thought very little of them. Emma leaned toward Daniel and whispered, "Do you think they're bluffing?" Her voice was low, almost drowned out by the static of the transmission. Daniel shook his head. "I don't know, but I don't think we should take that risk." As the hours passed, world leaders convened emergency meetings to discuss how to respond. Some argued for immediate surrender, believing it was the safest option. Others insisted on standing firm, even if it meant risking war. Meanwhile, protests erupted in cities around the globe. People held signs reading, "Stand up to the aliens," and "Earth belongs to us." The tension was palpable, and fear spread, like wildfire. Back in the control room, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that there had to be another way. There had to be something humanity could do to show the Vrilax they weren't as weak as they seemed. He remembered hearing rumors about a secret project buried deep within classified files, a project codenamed Phantom Blade. No one knew much about it, but the name alone suggested it was something extraordinary. Curiosity got the better of him, and Daniel decided to dig deeper. With Emma's help, he hacked into restricted databases using codes they weren't supposed to have access to. It took hours of searching, but eventually, they found what they were looking for. Phantom Blade was real, and it was far more impressive than either of them could have imagined. The project involved creating an invisible warship designed to evade detection by even the most advanced sensors. The ship, named Aurora, had been in development for decades, hidden away in underground facilities while scientists worked tirelessly to perfect its systems. Daniel stared at the screen, his heart racing. "This could be our answer," he said, turning to Emma. She nodded slowly, her expression serious. "If it works," she added. Neither of them knew if Aurora was ready for combat, but it was the only hope they had left. Word of their discovery eventually reached Admiral William Hayes, a grizzled veteran who oversaw special operations for the military. When Daniel and Emma requested a meeting, he agreed reluctantly, curious about what two civilians thought they could contribute. They explained everything they had learned about Phantom Blade and urged him to consider deploying Aurora against. The Vrilax Admiral Hayes listened carefully, his weathered face unreadable. After a long pause, he sighed and leaned back in his chair. "Aurora isn't fully tested," he admitted. "But if what you found is true, it might be our only shot." The decision was made quickly after that. A skeleton crew would be assembled to operate Aurora, and Daniel and Emma volunteered to join the mission. Both knew the risks involved, but they also knew they couldn't sit idly by while the fate of the world hung in the balance. As preparations began, Xenar grew increasingly impatient. His broadcasts became more aggressive, mocking humanity's silence as proof of their cowardice. "You are nothing," Xenar declared during one particularly scathing message. "Your time is running out. Choose wisely, or not at all." Despite the growing pressure, work on Aurora continued around the clock. Engineers fine-tuned its cloaking system, tested its weapons, and ran simulations to prepare for any scenario. Daniel and Emma trained alongside the rest of the crew, learning how to operate the ship's complex controls. Every moment felt like borrowed time, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on everyone involved. Finally, the day came when Aurora was ready to launch. Hidden beneath layers of rock and steel, the warship emerged from its underground hangar for the first time. Its sleek design shimmered faintly in the artificial light, before disappearing completely as the cloaking system activated. For a brief moment, everyone in the facility paused to watch in awe. This was humanity's last hope, and it was breathtakingly beautiful. As Aurora slipped silently into space, Daniel and Emma exchanged nervous smiles. They didn't know what awaited them out there, but they were determined to prove Xenar wrong. Humanity wasn't weak or primitive. It was resilient, resourceful, and full of potential. All they needed was a chance to show it, and now, thanks to Aurora, they might just get that chance. The journey to Earth's orbit felt longer than it should have. Inside Aurora, the crew moved with a mix of tension and determination. Daniel Carter sat at one of the control panels, his fingers flying over buttons as he monitored the ship's systems. The hum of the engines was steady, almost soothing, but it did little to calm his racing thoughts. Beside him, Emma Lewis worked on ensuring the cloaking system remained active. Her green eyes darted between screens, double-checking every reading. Admiral William Hayes stood near the front of the bridge, his arms crossed and his jaw tight. He had spent decades in the military, but this mission was unlike anything he'd ever faced. The fate of humanity rested on a single, untested warship. If Aurora failed, there would be no second chances. Still, he kept his doubts hidden. Morale was fragile enough without adding to it. As they approached the Vrilax fleet, the enormity of what they were about to do hit everyone. Outside the windows, or rather, where the windows would be if they weren't cloaked, the alien ships loomed, like dark clouds against the stars. Their jagged designs and glowing energy cores made them look both menacing and otherworldly. The mothership, larger than the rest combined, floated at the center of the formation. It was Xenar's throne, a symbol of his arrogance and power. Daniel swallowed hard as he studied the readings on his screen. "Their sensors are scanning constantly," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're looking for any sign of movement. Emma nodded, her hands moving quickly across her own panel. That's why we stay cloaked. As long as they can't detect us, we're safe. Admiral Hayes stepped closer, his boots clicking softly on the metal floor. Safe isn't good enough, he said gruffly. We need to know their weak spots, find out how they operate. Daniel hesitated before responding. From what I can tell, their weapons rely on targeting energy signatures. If something doesn't emit heat or radiation, they don't see it. That's why Aurora is invisible, Emma added. But we still need to be careful. One wrong.
Move, and they'll find us. The Admiral gave a curt nod. Then let's not make any mistakes.
Time seemed to stretch as Aurora maneuvered closer to the Vrilax fleet. The crew worked silently, each person focused on their task. Every beep and whir from the ship's systems felt louder than usual, magnified by the weight of what hung in the balance. Outside, the alien ships drifted lazily, unaware of the invisible predator slipping through their ranks. Zynar's voice crackled over the comms, interrupting the quiet. His holographic projection appeared on a nearby monitor, his glowing blue eyes piercing even through the static. Humans, he began, his tone dripping with mockery. Your time has run out. Where are your leaders? Where is your response? Daniel clenched his fists under the table. He wanted nothing more than to shout back, to tell Zynar exactly what humanity thought of his threats. But Admiral Hayes had given strict orders. Silence. They couldn't risk giving away their position. Not yet. Instead, Daniel forced himself to focus on the data streaming across his screen. He noticed patterns in the way the Vrilax ships moved, how they communicated with bursts of light and energy. It was fascinating, in a grim sort of way. These aliens might think they were superior, but their technology wasn't infallible. There were gaps in their defenses, moments when their scans overlapped awkwardly or left blind spots. Aurora could exploit those weaknesses if they played their cards right. Emma leaned toward Daniel, her voice low. Look at this, she said, pointing to a cluster of smaller ships near the edge of the formation. They're patrolling in pairs. If we disable one, the other will probably investigate. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You think we should take a shot? Not yet, Admiral Hayes interjected, overhearing their conversation. We wait until we're ready, until we have no choice. Minutes ticked by like hours. The tension inside Aurora grew thicker with each passing second. Then suddenly, Zynar's hologram flickered again. This time his expression was darker, angrier. You dare ignore me? He spat. Fine. If you will not speak, then you will suffer. Before anyone on Aurora could react, beams of light shot down from the Vrilax fleet, striking cities across the globe. Explosions lit up the night sky, sending plumes of smoke into the atmosphere. People screamed, buildings crumbled, and chaos erupted below. The attack was swift and brutal, designed to break humanity's spirit. Back on the bridge, the crew froze. Daniel stared at the monitors showing live footage of the destruction. His chest tightened as he recognized landmarks from his hometown. Emma covered her mouth with her hand, tears welling in her eyes. Even Admiral Hayes looked shaken, though he tried to hide it. We have to do something, Daniel stammered, his voice trembling. We can't just sit here and watch. Admiral, Hayes took a deep breath, his face hardening. This is why we're here, he said firmly. Get ready. We strike now. Emma wiped her tears and nodded, returning to her station. Daniel did the same, pushing aside his fear and focusing on the task ahead. Aurora had been built for moments like this, to stand up when all hope seemed lost. Now it was time to prove its worth. The cloaked warship slid into position directly above the Vrilax mothership. Its sleek design shimmered faintly in the glow of Earth's atmosphere, though the aliens couldn't see it. Daniel adjusted the targeting systems, lining up the first shot. Emma monitored the cloaking field, making sure it held steady. Admiral Hayes stood at the center of the bridge, his gaze fixed on the alien fleet. On my mark, the Admiral said, His voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. Seconds felt like an eternity. Finally, he gave the order. Fire. Aurora unleashed its first volley, a concentrated beam of energy that struck the nearest Vrilax patrol ship. The alien vessel exploded in a burst of light, debris scattering into the void. For a moment, there was silence. Then alarms blared across the Vrilax fleet. Ships scrambled to locate the source of the attack, their scanners frantically searching for the invisible enemy. Zynar's hologram reappeared, his glowing eyes wide with shock. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice laced with disbelief. "Show yourselves." Instead of answering, Aurora struck again, disabling another patrol ship. The Vrilax responded with a barrage of laser fire, but their shots passed harmlessly through empty space. Without a target to lock onto, they were powerless. Daniel allowed himself a small smile as he watched the chaos unfold. "They're blind," he said, his voice tinged with satisfaction. "Just like we planned." Emma nodded, relief washing over her. "It's working. Keep hitting their weak points." Admiral Hayes didn't share their optimism. "Don't celebrate yet," he warned. "They'll adapt. We need to stay one step ahead." As the battle raged on, Aurora danced through the Vrilax fleet like a ghost. It fired precise shots, disabling ships without causing unnecessary casualties. The goal wasn't to destroy. It was to show the aliens that humanity wasn't defenseless. Each successful strike boosted the crew's confidence, proving that their gamble had paid off. Outside, the Vrilax fleet began to falter. Ships pulled back, regrouping around the mothership. Zynar's hologram flickered once more, his expression shifting from anger to uncertainty. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "What are you?" For the first time since the invasion began, humanity held the upper hand. And aboard Aurora, the crew knew they had sent a clear message. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The war wasn't over yet, but for the first time in days there was hope. Document. Part 3. The Vrilax fleet was in disarray. Ships that had once moved with perfect coordination now drifted aimlessly, their crews scrambling to understand what was happening. Zynar's holographic projection flickered on the monitors. Inside Aurora, his glowing blue eyes wide with confusion and growing panic. "What are you?" he demanded again, his voice no longer dripping with arrogance but instead tinged with fear. For the first time, the alien leader seemed unsure of himself. Daniel Carter watched the chaos unfold from his station, his fingers hovering over the controls. He felt a surge of pride mixed with disbelief. Just hours ago, humanity had been on the brink of surrender, bowing under the weight of Zynar's threats. Now Aurora had turned the tables. The invisible warship wasn't just holding its own, it was dominating. Every shot fired by the Vrilax missed its mark because they couldn't see Aurora. Every strike delivered by the human crew hit its target with precision. Emma Lewis glanced at Daniel, her green eyes shining with determination. "We're doing it," she whispered, almost to herself. "We're actually doing it." Admiral William Hayes stood at the center of the bridge, his arms crossed as he observed the battle unfolding outside. His expression remained stern, but there was a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. "Don't get cocky," he warned, though his tone wasn't harsh. "They'll figure out something soon. We need to end this before they do." Daniel nodded, refocusing on his task. He adjusted the targeting systems, lining up another shot. Emma kept a close eye on the cloaking field, ensuring it remained stable. The last thing they needed was for the Vrilax to detect Aurora now, when they were so close to victory. As the invisible warship continued its assault, the Vrilax ships began retreating toward their mothership. It was clear they were regrouping, trying to form a defensive perimeter around Zynar's massive vessel. Smaller ships clustered together, their glowing energy cores pulsing erratically. They were preparing for something, perhaps a counterattack or a desperate attempt to locate Aurora. "They're panicking," Emma said, analyzing the movements on her screen. "Look at how erratic their scans are. They're firing blindly, hoping to hit us." "Good," Admiral Hayes replied, Let them waste their ammunition. Keep picking them off. Aurora struck again, disabling another patrol ship with a precise blast. The explosion sent shockwaves rippling through space, scattering debris in all directions. The Vrilax fleet grew smaller and smaller as more ships fell victim to humanity's invisible predator. Zynar's hologram reappeared, his expression shifting from confusion to anger. "This is impossible," he shouted, his deep voice trembling with frustration. "How can you hide from us? Reveal yourselves." Daniel clenched his jaw, resisting the urge to respond. Admiral Hayes had made it clear. Silence was key. Letting Zynar believe Aurora was some kind of supernatural force would only add to the aliens' fear. Still, Daniel couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction knowing how wrong Zynar was. Humanity hadn't relied on magic or miracles. They had relied on ingenuity, teamwork, and sheer willpower. Emma leaned closer to Daniel, her voice low. "Do you think he realizes we're human?" Daniel shrugged. "Maybe not yet, but even if he does, it won't matter. He underestimated us, and now he's paying for it." Outside, the Vrilax fleet launched a desperate barrage of laser fire, their beams crisscrossing through empty space. None came close to hitting Aurora, but the display was unsettling nonetheless. The aliens were throwing everything they had into the fight, hoping to overwhelm their unseen opponent. Admiral Hayes studied the monitors carefully, his brow furrowed. "They're focusing too much on offense," he muttered. "Their defenses are weakening." "What does that mean for us?" Emma asked. "It means we go for the heart," the Admiral replied, pointing at the massive mothership looming in the distance. "Take out their command center and the rest will fall apart." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. Attacking the mothership was risky. It was heavily armored and surrounded by smaller ships acting as shields. But if they succeeded, it could end the battle once and for all. "Can we do it?" Daniel asked, glancing at Emma. "We have to," she replied firmly. "If we don't, they'll keep coming back." Admiral Hayes gave the order. "Position us above the mothership. Prepare for a direct assault." Aurora moved silently, weaving through the chaos of the battlefield. The crew worked in perfect harmony, each person focused on their role. Daniel adjusted the targeting systems, aiming for a weak spot near the base of the mothership. Emma monitored the cloaking field, making sure it held steady despite the increased activity around them. Admiral Hayes paced the bridge, his sharp eyes scanning every monitor for signs of trouble. Finally, they were in position. The mothership loomed. Above them, its surface covered in strange symbols and glowing panels. It was a fortress in space designed to intimidate and dominate. But beneath its imposing exterior, it had vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities Aurora was built to exploit. "Ready?" Admiral Hayes asked, his voice calm but commanding. "Ready." Daniel and Emma replied in unison. "Fire." Aurora unleashed its most powerful weapon, a concentrated beam of energy that pierced through the mothership's armor like a knife through paper. The impact was devastating, sending shock waves rippling across the alien vessel's surface. Alarms blared inside the mothership, and secondary explosions erupted as damaged systems overloaded. Zynar's hologram appeared once more, his expression one of pure terror. "No!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "You cannot defeat us. We are superior." But his words rang hollow. The Vrilax fleet was crumbling, its ships either destroyed or retreating. The mothership itself was listing badly, its once gleaming surface marred by scorch marks and gaping holes. Smoke poured from its engines, and its lights flickered erratically. Inside, Aurora. The crew exchanged triumphant smiles. They had done it. Against all odds, they had proven that humanity wasn't weak or primitive. They were capable of standing up to even the most advanced foes. Admiral Hayes allowed himself a small smile. "Well done," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "Now let's finish this." Zynar's hologram flickered wildly, his glowing eyes dimming as power failures spread throughout the mothership. We accept your terms," he stammered, his arrogance replaced by desperation. "Cease fire, and we will withdraw." Daniel looked at Admiral Hayes, waiting for instructions. The Admiral hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Hold your fire," he ordered. "Let's see what he has to say." The Vrilax fleet stopped attacking, their remaining ships pulling back to regroup around the crippled mothership. Zynar's hologram stabilized slightly, though his appearance was haggard and defeated. "We underestimated you," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "We thought you were unworthy of our attention. We were wrong." Admiral Hayes stepped forward, addressing the alien leader directly. "You mocked us. You threatened us. You attacked our home. And now you beg for mercy. This is your lesson. Never underestimate humanity." Zynar lowered his head, his glowing eyes dimming further. "We will leave your planet and never return, but know this, we will remember you." With that, the hologram vanished, leaving the bridge of Aurora in silence. Outside, the Vrilax fleet began retreating, their ships limping away from Earth's orbit. One by one they disappeared into the void until only empty space remained. For a long moment no one spoke. The crew simply stared at the monitors, watching as the threat faded into nothingness. Then slowly, cheers erupted. People hugged, laughed, and cried, overwhelmed by the enormity of what they had accomplished. Emma turned to Daniel, tears streaming down her face. "We did it," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "We saved Earth." Daniel smiled, nodding. "Yeah, we really did." Admiral Hayes raised a hand, signaling for quiet. "This isn't the end," he reminded them. "We've shown the universe that humanity is strong, but we need to stay vigilant. There may be others like the Vrilax out there, and we can't afford to let our guard down." The crew nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. They had won the battle, but the war for survival in the cosmos was far from over. As Aurora began its journey back to Earth, the crew reflected on what they had achieved. They had faced an enemy far stronger than themselves and emerged victorious, not through brute force but through intelligence, teamwork, and courage. And somewhere deep within the stars, the Vrilax would carry the memory of humanity's defiance, a reminder that even the smallest spark could ignite a flame bright enough to challenge the darkness. Document Part 4. The return of Aurora to Earth was met with a mix of celebration and relief. As the invisible warship decloaked above the planet, its sleek design shimmering in the sunlight, millions of people watched from below. News outlets broadcast live footage of the ship descending through the atmosphere, accompanied by cheers and applause. For the first time in days, humanity felt hope instead of fear. Daniel Carter sat quietly in his seat on the bridge, staring out at the blue and green orb growing larger outside the windows. He still couldn't believe what they had accomplished. Just hours ago, the Vrilax had seemed unstoppable, their arrogance making them appear invincible. But now, thanks to Aurora and its crew, Earth was safe, at least for now. Emma Lewis leaned back in her chair, letting out a long breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her green eyes were red from lack of sleep, but there was a spark of triumph in them. "We did it," she said softly, almost to herself. "We actually did it." Admiral William Hayes stood near the front of the bridge, his arms crossed as he gazed at the approaching planet. His expression was calm, but there was a flicker of pride in his eyes. He had spent decades preparing for moments like this, training soldiers and strategizing for battles that might never come. And yet when the moment finally arrived, it wasn't brute force or overwhelming numbers that saved humanity. It was ingenuity, teamwork, and courage. As Aurora touched down at a secure military base, the crew prepared to disembark. They were greeted by a crowd of officials, reporters, and cheering civilians. Cameras flashed and microphones were thrust toward them as they stepped off the ship. Daniel squinted against the bright lights, feeling overwhelmed by the attention. Emma kept him close to him, her hand brushing his arm reassuringly. "Thank you," someone shouted from the crowd. "You saved us." Daniel smiled weakly, unsure of how to respond. He didn't feel like a hero. He was just a scientist who had stumbled into something far bigger than himself. Beside him, Admiral Hayes stepped forward, raising a hand to quiet the crowd. "This victory belongs to everyone," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "It's a testament to human ingenuity, determination, and unity. We faced an enemy stronger than ourselves, and we proved that we are capable of standing up to any threat." His words were met with thunderous applause, but Daniel noticed the Admiral's tone carried a note of caution. Hayes knew better than anyone that this wasn't the end. The Vrilax might have retreated, but they weren't gone. Somewhere out there among the stars, other threats lurked. Threats humanity might not be ready for. After the initial excitement died down, the crew was whisked away to debriefing rooms. Officials wanted every detail of the mission, from the moment they launched Aurora to the final confrontation with Zynar. Daniel and Emma recounted their experiences, describing how they had studied the Vrilax fleet's movements, exploited their weaknesses, and struck with precision. The room buzzed with energy as engineers and strategists pored over data logs, eager to learn everything they could about humanity's first real encounter with an alien species. Meanwhile, news of the victory spread across the globe. Cities that had been devastated by the Vrilax attack began rebuilding, inspired by the knowledge that they had fought back and won. Protests turned into celebrations, with people gathering in streets and parks to honor the crew of Aurora. Social media exploded with messages of gratitude and admiration, turning Daniel, Emma, and the others into overnight celebrities. But amidst the celebrations, there were also calls for action. World leaders convened emergency meetings to discuss how to prepare for future encounters with extraterrestrial life. The success of Aurora highlighted both humanity's potential and its vulnerabilities. While the invisible warship had proven effective, it was only one ship, a single piece in a much larger puzzle. Daniel found himself invited to speak at these meetings, alongside Emma and Admiral Hayes. At first, he hesitated, unsure if he belonged in such high-stakes discussions. But Emma encouraged him, reminding him that his insights could help shape humanity's future. Together, they presented their findings, emphasizing the importance of innovation, cooperation, and adaptability. "We can't rely on luck next time," Daniel said during one meeting, his voice firm despite his nerves. "The Vrilax underestimated us because they thought we were primitive. But technology alone isn't enough. We need to keep pushing boundaries, to think creatively and work together." Emma nodded, adding, "And we need to share our knowledge. No one country or organization should have all the answers. Humanity is strongest when we act as one." Their words resonated with the leaders in attendance, sparking plans for a global initiative focused on space exploration and defense. Resources were pooled, research programs expanded, and international partnerships formed. It was a monumental shift, one driven by the realization that humanity's survival depended on unity rather than division. Back at NASA headquarters, Daniel and Emma returned to their work with renewed purpose. They continued analyzing data from the battle, searching for ways to improve Aurora and develop new technologies. Other scientists joined them, inspired by their bravery and ingenuity. The project that had once been shrouded in secrecy became a beacon of hope, symbolizing humanity's ability to rise above adversity. Admiral Hayes remained involved, overseeing efforts to expand Earth's defenses. He pushed for the creation of more ships like Aurora, each one equipped with advanced cloaking systems and cutting-edge weaponry, but he also emphasized the importance of diplomacy, urging world leaders to reach out to other civilizations, not with hostility, but with open minds. Months passed, and life on Earth slowly returned to normal. The scars left by the Vrilax attack would take time to heal, but the spirit of resilience endured. People looked to the stars with a mixture of awe and determination, knowing that humanity's place in the universe was no longer defined by fear or doubt. One evening, Daniel and Emma stood on a rooftop overlooking the city. Lights twinkled below, and the sky above was filled with stars. They had been invited to countless events since returning from the mission, but tonight they simply wanted to enjoy the quiet. "Do you think we'll ever see the Vrilax again?" Emma asked, breaking the silence. Daniel shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, we're ready. Emma smiled, leaning against him. Yeah, we showed them what we're made of. They stood there for a while, watching the stars and thinking about the future. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger universe, and though the road ahead would be challenging, it was also full of possibilities. Far beyond Earth's orbit, the Vrilax fleet drifted through deep space, licking its wounds. Zynar sat in his damaged throne room, his glowing blue eyes dimmed by defeat. He had underestimated humanity, and it had cost him dearly. But as he stared out at the endless void, a new resolve took root in his mind. Humanity had earned his respect, but not his forgiveness. They had proven themselves worthy opponents, and that made them dangerous. Someday, the Vrilax would return, stronger and wiser. Until then, they would remember the lesson they had learned: never underestimate your enemy. Back on Earth, Daniel and Emma didn't know about Zynar's thoughts. They didn't need to. What mattered was that humanity had stood up to a threat, far greater than itself, and emerged victorious. And as they gazed at the stars, they knew one thing for certain: no matter what challenges lay ahead, humanity would face them together. In the weeks and months that followed, Aurora became a symbol of hope and resilience. Its story was told in classrooms, written in books, and celebrated in films. The crew was hailed as heroes, their names etched into history. But for Daniel, Emma, and the others, the true reward wasn't fame or recognition. It was the knowledge that they had made a difference. Humanity had stared into the abyss and refused to back down. And in doing so, they had proven something important. Even in the darkest moments, there was light. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, there was hope. And even when mocked or underestimated, humanity could rise to the occasion. As the years went by, Earth continued to grow stronger, bolder, and more united. New ships joined Aurora in the skies, each one a testament to human ingenuity. Scientists reached further into space, exploring distant planets and moons. Diplomats sought alliances with other civilizations, striving to build bridges instead of walls. And somewhere deep within the cosmos, the Vrilax watched and waited. They remembered humanity's defiance, vowing never to underestimate them again. But for now, the stars belonged to Earth, and to the brave souls who dared to dream beyond their limits. Daniel and Emma eventually returned to their lives, though nothing was quite the same. They carried the weight of their experience with them, using it to inspire others and push humanity forward. And whenever they looked up at the night sky, they felt a sense of pride, not just for what they had done, but for what humanity could achieve. Because in the end, it wasn't about weapons or technology. It was about heart. It was about believing in something greater than yourself and refusing to give up, even when the odds seemed impossible. That was humanity's greatest strength, and it was a strength that would carry them far into the future. And so, under the watchful eyes of the HFY stars, humanity took its place among the cosmos, not as conquerors, but as explorers, dreamers, and survivors, ready to face whatever came next. Months had passed since the battle with the Vrilax, and Earth was beginning to settle into a new rhythm. The scars of the attack were slowly healing, but reminders of the conflict lingered everywhere. Cranes dotted city skylines as construction crews worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been destroyed. Schools held assemblies to honor the bravery of those who had fought, and museums added exhibits showcasing the story of Aurora and its crew. Daniel Carter walked through the streets of Washington, D.C., his hands stuffed into the pockets of his jacket. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. He wasn't used to being recognized in public, but today, a group of children stopped him on the sidewalk, their eyes wide with admiration. "Are you really Daniel Carter?" one of them asked, clutching a drawing of Aurora that looked like it had been colored with crayons. Daniel smiled, crouching down to their level. "Yeah, I am. Did you draw this?" The child nodded enthusiastically. "It's your spaceship. You saved us." He chuckled softly, signing the back of the paper before handing it back. "Thanks for the picture. It looks great." As the kids ran off, waving excitedly, Emma Lewis appeared beside him, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one, her green eyes twinkling with amusement. Getting mobbed by fans again? Daniel took a sip of the coffee, shaking his head. I'll never get used to it. I'm just glad they're happy. Emma grinned. You should be proud. You helped save the world. They continued walking, heading toward a nearby park where they often met to talk about work. Or sometimes just to escape the chaos of their newfound fame. Since returning from the mission, both had been swamped with requests for interviews, speeches, and meetings. While they appreciated the recognition, they missed the simplicity of their old lives. Sitting on a bench beneath a canopy of golden leaves, Daniel glanced at Emma. Do you ever think about what comes next? I mean, after all this? Emma tilted her head thoughtfully. You mean if the Vrilax come back? Not just them, Daniel replied. There are probably other species out there, some friendly, some not. What happens when we meet them? Are we ready? Emma sighed, looking out at the park. Families strolled along the paths, dogs chased frisbees, and children laughed as they played on swings. It was a peaceful scene, a stark contrast to the battles they had faced in space. I don't know if we'll ever truly be ready, she admitted. But we've made progress. People are working together more than ever before. That's something. Daniel nodded, sipping his coffee. Still, it feels like we're just scratching the surface. There's so much we don't know. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. Admiral William Hayes appeared, dressed in civilian clothes instead of his usual uniform. His face was lined with fatigue, but his eyes still carried their characteristic sharpness. Mind if I join you? He asked, gesturing to the empty space on the bench. Of course, Emma said, scooting over to make room. Hayes sat down heavily, resting his elbows on his knees. For a moment he simply stared at the ground, lost in thought. Then, without looking up, he spoke. We've got trouble. Daniel and Emma exchanged worried glances. What kind of trouble? Daniel asked. Hayes hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Our satellites picked up unusual activity near Jupiter. Energy readings, ship movements, it's not natural. Something's out there. Emma frowned. Could it be the Vrilax? No, Hayes replied firmly. This is different. Smaller, ships faster. They're staying hidden, but we can tell they're watching us. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. Do we know who they are? Hayes shook his head. Not yet. But whoever they are, they're advanced. And they're testing us. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of Hayes's words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Humanity had barely survived its last encounter with an alien species. Now another unknown threat loomed on the horizon. What do we do? Emma finally asked, breaking the silence. We prepare, Hayes said, his voice steady. We ramp up production of ships like Aurora. We improve our defenses, and we send a message loud and clear that humanity won't back down. Daniel leaned forward, his mind racing. If they're watching us, maybe we should try communicating. Let them know we're not afraid. Hayes raised an eyebrow. And risk showing them our weaknesses? No. First, we gather intelligence. Then, we decide how to respond. Emma nodded slowly. Makes sense, but we need to move quickly. Hayes stood, brushing off his pants. You two will be part of the team handling this. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning. Be ready. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Daniel and Emma alone on the bench. They sat in silence for a while, processing what they had just heard. This isn't going to be easy, Emma said eventually. No, Daniel agreed, but it never is. The next day, the team assembled in a secure facility deep underground. Maps of the solar system covered the walls, marked with red dots indicating areas of suspicious activity. Engineers, scientists, and military personnel bustled around, preparing equipment and analyzing data. Admiral Hayes stood at the front of the room addressing the group. We don't know who we're dealing with yet, but we can't afford to underestimate them. Our priority is gathering information. Once we understand their capabilities, we'll formulate a plan. Daniel and Emma were assigned to monitor incoming data from probes sent to investigate the mysterious ships. Hours turned into days as they pored over readings, searching for patterns or clues. The tension in the room was palpable, everyone aware of the stakes. Finally, one of the probes transmitted footage of the unknown vessels. On the monitors, sleek ships darted between asteroids, their designs unlike anything humanity had seen before. They moved with incredible speed and precision, almost as if they were alive. "They're fast," Emma murmured, her eyes glued to the screen. "Faster than anything we've got." "And small," Daniel added. "Hard to detect unless you're looking closely." Hayes stepped closer, studying the images. "Can we track them?" "We're trying," Emma replied. "But they keep disappearing. It's like they know we're watching." The Admiral frowned. "Then we'll have to force their hand." Over the next few weeks, humanity launched a series of decoy missions, sending unmanned drones into the region to provoke a reaction. At first, the unknown ships ignored them, continuing their evasive maneuvers. But eventually, curiosity, or perhaps arrogance, got the better of them. One of the alien vessels fired on a drone, disabling it with a single shot. The energy signature of the weapon was unlike anything the team had encountered before. It was powerful, precise, and devastating. "They're not messing around," Daniel said, analyzing the data. "One hit, and it's over." Emma nodded, grimly. "Which means they're confident. Maybe too confident." Hayes crossed his arms, his expression hardening. "Confidence can turn into recklessness. We use that to our advantage." The decision was made to deploy Aurora, now retrofitted, with upgraded weapons and sensors. Under cover of darkness, the invisible warship slipped into position near Jupiter, waiting silently for its chance to strike. When the alien ships returned, Aurora struck first, targeting one of the smaller vessels with a calculated blast. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through space, forcing the others to scatter. For the first time, humanity had taken the initiative. The aliens responded with fury, launching a barrage of attacks. But Aurora remained cloaked, striking from unexpected angles and retreating before they could retaliate. Each hit weakened, their formation exposing vulnerabilities. As the battle raged on, Daniel and Emma worked tirelessly to maintain the ship's systems. Sweat dripped from their brows, and exhaustion gnawed at their resolve. Still, they pushed forward, knowing that failure wasn't an option. Finally, the alien ships began to retreat, vanishing into the depths of space as quickly as they had appeared. Silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the hum of Aurora's engines. Back on Earth, news of the skirmish spread rapidly. While the outcome was inconclusive, humanity had once again proven its resilience. The aliens hadn't been defeated, but they had been deterred. In the aftermath, Daniel and Emma stood on the bridge of Aurora, staring out at the stars. They knew this wasn't the end. Somewhere out there, among the infinite expanse of the cosmos, countless challenges awaited. But they also knew one thing for certain: humanity would face them together. Armed with courage, ingenuity, and an unshakable belief in their potential, they would continue to push forward, into the unknown, toward the future, and as long as they did, the stars would remain within reach.